And so I think all of these people here that we've invited, they actually, as I hear them, have great benefit from having a corporate purpose, working with it, and marshalling its energy in the organization. And the first speaker we have is Lene Skole from the Lundbeck Foundation, and she's going to talk about how they work with, Lundbeck is of course a Danish enterprise foundation, and she's going to talk about how they work it in the Lundbeck Foundation. How do they use purpose? What role does purpose play? Take it away, Lene.
Thank you very much, Steen. And it's hard to follow all the others we have seen this afternoon. And mine will be a lot less theoretical and much more practical. And as Steen said, I'm CEO of the Lundbeck Foundation, and that actually is one of Denmark's largest enterprise foundations. And when preparing for this, I asked myself the question, as a CEO, what's actually my core responsibility? I mean, I can list, I don't know how many responsibilities, but what's actually the core of what I do? And the core of my responsibility, as set out by the board, is really to be a good owner of the pharmaceutical company Lundbeck, that focuses on brain disease, and to be a good partner to society. And I think that's really how I can describe what's actually the core of what I do. Now, a little bit more then about the foundation. Denmark has got lots of different foundations, ranging from PE funds, sovereign investment funds, and I have sort of, by that red circle, shown where are we as an enterprise foundation. There are many enterprise foundations in Denmark. I think it's about 1,300 or something like that. Steen knows that much better than I do. But there are actually not that many of them that are at the same time engaged owners of large companies. And if you are an engaged owner of a large company as an enterprise foundation, then you have to live by some statutes that are made by the founder of that enterprise foundation. And I think the similarities across all of these foundations is that there is typically a purpose around owning a company and ensuring its longevity, and a philanthropic purpose. I think that's sort of the basic model. We also have statutes, and we used those statutes as the outset to formulate first our purpose, because we thought that could very well be not in opposition to, but a little bit different than our statutes, and also to form our strategy. So what do we actually do? I think one thing I just want to mention is that we were founded by Grete Lundbeck, who was a business leader. She was actually the first employee of Lundbeck back in 1915. She did really well because she had a great career, and she ended up marrying the founder of the company and then inheriting the whole thing. So that's one way of doing it. And then she also ended up donating all of her shares to a foundation. So in reality, she was a lady with a very strong sense of purpose and with some very strong values. And when I was listening actually to the previous speakers here, one thing I noted was that they talked very much about, incentives, how you measure, how you do this and that, and how you get enterprise owners to do something. The one thing I didn't hear about was values. And I actually think values are absolutely crucial when you are in business and when you run a business. And she certainly had that. I've also tried to illustrate here what are actually the 5 key roles that we have as an enterprise foundation. I mean, there are some of them that, many companies, other foundations, in particular companies will have. Stabilizing financial returns. Who doesn't want to do that? That seems a good idea. biotech investor, could also be fintech investor. People like to be investors. That's sort of quite generic in a sense. And an active public voice, I think, is something that everybody would like to have. Again, getting back to the core, what do we have that just sets us aside, perhaps from others, is that we are long-term business owners. And I mean really long-term. Not in the sense of like a private equity fund that would say long-term, that's up to 7 years. I mean, we're really long-term. And we give back to society. Nobody owns us. So I think what you could do, if you want to boil it down to something really short that sounds very, very much like the businesses that we normally talk about, then we run business and we invest the dividends, because nobody else gets it. We decide what to use it for, and then that's the philanthropic part that we do. So again, that was sort of trying to take you from the core of what we do. So what does it look like now? We still have the core, Lundbeck with the red circle, and being a partner to society through our grants and prizes. But over the years, we've grown, and the activities have become much wider and much more complex. And it's actually in that complexity, going from the core of being long-term owners of Lundbeck and partners of society to having the complexity of what we have today, this is where our purpose helps us navigate. That's why we have it. That's why we need it. Because with our purpose, we get guidance to how we can combine long-term perspective with shorter-term actions. It guides us when we invest in other companies. It guides us in how we involve ourselves and engage ourselves into the companies that we already have. And in particular, I think you can imagine with a foundation where you can build an enormous amount of complexity. There's hardly anything we can't do. But the purpose also guides us to what we do, and in particular, what we don't do. So that's actually how we use our purpose. And I thought that was my short introduction to hopefully get you thinking a little bit, and then I'm sure I can answer some questions later on.
That's right. What should we ask her, Colin?
Well, first of all, thank you very much for that. That was extremely interesting. Could I just ask you a little bit more about the process of appointing the members of the foundation? Is it essentially a self-elected body, or what? Who are the trustees?
Who they are,
Yeah.
right. The foundation has got a board of directors, and that board of directors, as there are no owners, then yes, at the outset, they sort of appoint themselves, so to speak. What we have done, because that can actually be quite dangerous in the long run, if you let people do that, is that we have decided and written down so that it's legally binding for us a couple of things that are important. First of all, there cannot be anyone who has worked at the board or executive level in one of our subsidiaries or in the foundation, such as myself, then you cannot ever sit on the board of the foundation. So that gives a little bit of arm's length. We've also said that you're up for election each year, follow the same rules as a quoted company as in terms of being independent, and that you have to be independent. We have then got 3 commercial profiles and 3 research profiles. And then we've got 4 employee elected. They're elected from the whole group. So that actually means that we have someone from each of the subsidiaries. Then when we then make changes, we actually produce a description of what are the competences that we need. We go to some of the well-known search companies, give them that description, and simply ask them to start a process like anyone else would. So we try to come as close as we possibly can to the process that would run in a quoted company, and abiding by the same rules and making sure that we have that clear governance where we have independence at the board level.
Okay,
And then the board employs the executive team, like
Brilliant.
myself.
Okay, thank you.
You have a nomination committee at the board, right?
Yes, we don't call it a nomination committee, but it will normally be the chairmanship that will do that and then involve the whole board as we go along.
So the recommendation is that should be a formal, process.
Yes, and there is a formal
Yeah,
process.
that's good. Okay, so we are no doubt, I think, that foundations have a purpose, But what about the companies? How do you make sure? What happens if a company is out of line? I remember there was
they're
one.
not.
No. There was one case a few years ago.
Which
where
one are
you
you
were
thinking
very
about?
publicly. Maybe you can talk about that. I'm thinking about Falck. What happened there?
That's right. We are owners of Falck, which is a Danish ambulance emergency company. And what happened was that we found out at board level, and it also became public, that there were some issues as to how they gained contracts and how they tried to influence the political system. And that's, of course, not in any way aligned with our values. It's not in any way aligned with statutes, purpose, anything. And in situations like that, there's really only one thing to do, and that is saying if you have the majority ownership of a company and you have the ability to do something when something's not working right, then you also have the obligation to do it. And that we did, so we changed the management team. And that is something I think it's a good question, and now we're focused around Falck. But in reality, if I can, just a very small anecdote, when I started in the foundation, at my very first board meeting at Lundbeck, there was a situation that the CEO had actually done something he was not supposed to do in accordance with our governance.
The CEO of Lundbeck, the company?
The Lundbeck of the company, thank you.
Where you are also sitting on the board?
Exactly, where I sit as deputy chair. And it was my very first board meeting, so I remember it very, very clearly, because everybody at the board, they just sort of turned around and looked at me. I didn't say anything, but I felt this question, okay, so what do we do? Again, and that's also why I talked about values earlier on. One thing is these really hard incentives that you can measure. But what is actually, my question really, what would we have done if this would have been the head of Germany, just as an example? And they said, we would have fired the person. I said, okay, you got your answer. There really isn't, you have to live by the values that you have. You have to do it in a nice way. But as sort of an engaged owner, you end up being in those dilemmas. And then you just have to stand up to it.
And what had he done, right? He had participated in a company. He had shares in a company which Lundbeck was buying,
yes,
and
exactly.
It wasn't fully disclosed. And he said he'd forgot, right?
Yes.
That's not good enough, right? So, out.
You don't forget things like that. You're not supposed to anyway.
Yeah, so the values is something that, you use that, and you implement it by sitting on the board in part. But
we do, yes.
But actually, what I remember about the Falck case is that you came out in the public.
Yes.
Was that deliberate, that
yes.
I need to send a signal here? Yes.
Yeah. If you are, like a foundation, as we don't have any owners, there is no AGM who can tell us what to do. And I think if we don't have that, then the next best thing is transparency. Being as transparent as we possibly can about anything we do, good or bad. That's also why when we report, our annual report, we try to make it as much as we possibly can, just like a quoted company where you can see everything that you would be able to see there. And when we do run into those dilemmas, then we also feel we need to go out and talk about it and say what we think. It's not always popular because sometimes you have to talk about things that are not that popular. But I think being transparent is the next best thing we can do. Got
it. Let's hear Paolo now. If you can come up here and be tortured by Colin and me if you dare. So Paolo is working for Asahi, And so can there be a purpose in a beer company which sells alcoholic beer? Isn't it just bad?
Oh, you're going straight for the gut.
Yes.
Okay, fantastic. So, hi, I'm Paolo. I work for an alcoholic beverage company. So, look, I think the answer, Steen, is yes. Absolutely yes. I think, one of the, for those of you that were here yesterday, we talked a little bit about purpose washing as well. We have to be a little bit more careful than many other organizations in this particular space, but I think there's a really great example right now going on as we speak. The Rugby World Cup is happening, as if any of you are followers of the Rugby World Cup. Asahi Superdry is the beer sponsor of the Rugby World Cup. We sponsor it with Asahi Superdry 0.0. It's a non-alcoholic variant of Superdry. If you ask me how much Superdry 0.0 are you selling today, what percentage of your sales today are non-alcoholic beer? And I answer the question, I don't know, about 0.2%. Then I think the obvious conclusion would be that we were purpose washing, and an alcoholic beverage company actually isn't doing what they say they are supposed to be doing. We actually sell already today, 10% of our portfolio is in the non-alcoholic space. We have externally communicated ambitions and plans behind them to get to 20%. So 1 in 5 beers that we sell by 2030 will be non-alcoholic. Unless you put actions behind the words that you profess to be purposeful, then you're not being purposeful. So I firmly believe that even an alcoholic beverage company can be purposeful. In fact, it's probably more important for us to have a North Star. I remember the first conversation I had regarding purpose was with Colin 5 years ago or so. And I went to Colin and asked him, so tell me about this purpose stuff, will you, Colin, please? Actually, Professor Mayers, I think. And Colin asked me a question. He said, why do you exist? Why does Asahi exist? What problem in the world are you looking to solve profitably? And I think I mumbled something along the lines of, making the best beer in the world and producing fantastic brands and working with society. And we have a bunch of farmers upstream of us and a lot of customers downstream of us and providing. He said, yeah, but that's not why do you exist? And the question was so big that I put it to one side and got on with business for about 6 months. The pandemic hit. As part of a sort of a strategy reset, we called in some consultants to help us. That's what we do. And as part of that consultant-led project, we decided we would find our purpose in a 2-week window in the 6-week project. That didn't work either. So we parked it again. And then what had happened, though, in that process was we'd sparked enough interest inside the organization to keep getting the question, well, actually, why do we exist? What is our purpose? It has to be more than just to make money. We've been around for hundreds of years. Some of our brands in Central Europe have literally been around for hundreds of years. Pilsner Urquell is a brand that we have in Czech Republic. It was first brewed in 1842. It is the mother or father of all Pilsners everywhere, whatever local brewers may say here in Denmark. So what is that thing that is the reason why we exist? And after 6 months of working across functions and across generations within the organization, using practitioners who have done this before with us, with our people, we came up, well, actually, we rediscovered our purpose. It wasn't a discovery. And our purpose is to create meaningful connections. If you think about what beer does, that's what it does. It's a product that brings people together. It's not a product that is generally shot quickly and then moved on from. It's a product that involves conversation, is there during celebrations, is there during difficult times. It was there during the pandemic. So, how do we make that come to life? We make it come to life. Actually, it's very difficult to make it come to life. We make it come to life first by getting everybody in the organization to engage with what that means for me, what that means for what I do, what that means for the decisions I make. So we chose in the first year after coming up with the strapline, which is step one of job number one, creating meaningful connections. We chose not to go out on stages and talk about this. We chose to communicate internally and engage specifically with senior leaders. So we took the top couple of hundred people. There are about 11,000 people in the division that I operate in. We took the top 200 and we said, okay, shut yourselves in rooms and let's have a conversation around what is going to change in what we do day to day if this thing, creating meaningful connections, is actually our greater why. Some got it straight away, some pretended to get it straight away, and some just didn't get it. And you know, we helped everybody along the way. Year two, we flipped it. So we decided we would engage more widely through our brands. At the end of the day, our brands touch many more consumers than I can talking to people. Yeah? We produce about 45 million hectoliters of beer per year. It's about 9 billion servings. So if we can get our message of creating meaningful connections to come to life through our brands, we have a much, much wider reach. And we decided to communicate more specifically with regulators, specifically with other stakeholders, specifically in our case with my board. I'm a divisional CEO. I'm not a group CEO. My group, of which we're about a third in terms of people, profit, and size and scale, doesn't have a purpose statement. And it's a group which has been reformed over the last 5 years through M&A. We're a group that was 95% Japan-centric until 5 years ago, and now we have a third of our business in Oceania, a third of our business in Europe, and a third of our business in Japan. So we've got a vision, we've got a mission, we've got values, we've got everything else. We don't have a purpose statement. And our conversation within the European business was, we feel the need to define this North Star for ourselves. But actually, I need to convince the boys and girls, mostly boys, I have to say, upstairs, to buy into this thing. And that's not necessarily an easy thing to do, especially when something so group-wide is coming from a non-group part of the group, so a division. And the choice was really simple. Continue knocking, banging on the door and trying to convince folks that this was important, or just start. And through the action of starting and through the actions and the results, convince group that actually this is a way forward. And we've done some quite radical things. And we've changed the compensation system for the top 200 executives to include our long-term incentive, including mine, only in Europe, includes something we call sustainable EBITDA, where we cost in the internal cost of carbon and plastic to our actual reported EBITDA. Is it perfect? No, but it touches people's pockets, it gets people's attention, and I promise you those folks that didn't really understand purpose, didn't want to understand purpose, or pretended to understand purpose, are now very interested in getting to be part of the conversation. So, our story is a story of the last 4 or 5 years. It started with ignorance. It was accelerated by momentum built from within the organization. By the organization, I mean the division. Our challenges are making it come to life, changing processes to ensure that it's enabled in every decision we make. Incentivization, measurement are part of that journey, and an extra task that we have specifically is getting, and I have to say, group is very open, but anything coming from a division needs to be managed. I hate to use the word politically. It needs to be managed well for consensus building across the group.
I guess you have to have a lot of courage, right? To do that. Not be too careful about protecting your job and so on.
No, I wouldn't say courage. I think openness and transparency. We explained every step of the way what we were doing, why we were doing it, because I believe that actually. We believe that our purpose of creating meaningful connections is true for the group, even the parts of the group that don't sell alcoholic beverages. So, if anything, my cunning plan is to have our purpose taken by the group as its purpose.
Yes.
Okay, and I think that would be a great topic to pick up on. So how could you, do you think you can get the rest of the group to buy into this? And in particular, Asahi in Japan, where the Japanese government is telling people to drink more to raise more revenue for the government, it sounds a bit of a...
Yeah. So I think the answer is yes. And I think it goes back to the question you asked me, which is, what problem are you solving profitably? I think at the end of the day, if we can bring it back to, and this thing is about, doing this thing is about doing good, living your values, but at the end of the day, ultimately, in the long term, because sometimes there might be some short-term investment required to enable it, in the long term to make more money, then yes, absolutely yes. And this notion, whatever the Japanese government wants or doesn't want, the end of the day, in most developed countries, it is almost impossible to get people to drink more, verging on immoral. Global per capita consumption of beer is about 30 litres per capita. In many European countries, we're well north of 100. Right. In Czech Republic, where I live, we're 144. Yeah. So getting people to drink more, not a good idea, whatever the government says. Getting people to drink better, either non-alcoholic instead of alcoholic, or more premium in smaller amounts, lower volumetric alcohol, is the answer. And by the way, better, more premium actually means more profitable generally. So that's the story I'm telling upstairs.
So basically, at the end of the day, it boils down to, is this in the long term going to be a value-creating activity?
Yeah, absolutely. And it has to be. I mean, businesses need to make money to be purposeful, ultimately. As part of our sustainable development goals and commitments, we have 19 breweries across Europe. Obviously, we're big users of water, we're big users of barley, we're big users of electricity and thermal power as well. One of our commitments is to get to 100% renewable sourced electricity in all of our breweries by 2025, and we're pretty much there. We only have one more country that we need to solve for. And the solution has been virtual power purchase agreements. When I asked the question, how are we going to get 100% renewable sourced, one of our younger financial youngsters who's worked with the economics of mutuality said, "You're asking the wrong question, Paolo." He said, "You need to ask the question, how are you going to do that profitably?" And actually, VPPAs have not only got us green energy, but they've got it at a lower blended rate than our previous energy sources. And this is something we shouldn't be shy of. Profit is not a bad word. We should be talking about being purposeful and doing so to create better value from an enterprise value in the long term.
Brilliant.
Yeah, brilliant. We could take notes on this because we had a long discussion who owns the purpose, right? And maybe the answer is whoever takes the initiative owns the purpose, right? Could be anywhere in the organization. Could be an employee, could be the owner.
I think it needs a senior voice to champion it at some point. But yeah, at the end of the day, so our journey started with an internal groundswell because I parked the problem twice.
Yeah, right. But so it must be a messy process, and as all human processes, right, are messy. Okay, let's hear Jakob. You're from a family business. Does purpose have a special role to play in a family business?
Yeah, thanks, Steen. Thanks very much for inviting me to this event, talking about purpose in a family-owned context, specifically in the family business that I represent, a family business that was founded by my grandfather 83 years ago. I'm third generation. I'm chairman of the family's holding board and vice chair of the operating entity of which the company owns still 70%, so by far majority owner. So I'll take you a little bit through the journey and how purpose has been sort of permeating our organization and everything that we do. So 83 years ago, my grandfather started the company Topsøe with a firm belief that by really applying science and deep engagement and investment in R&D, you could actually create a commercial operation, but with the purpose of solving significant societal problems. It was always the significant societal problems first and business afterwards. Not business is irrelevant, but purpose first. And how this has been playing out is the company developed throughout the first few decades which is still the world's leading technology for production of ammonia. And as you may know, ammonia is a primary ingredient in artificial fertilizer, and without which a couple of billion people would not get to eat today. So we've been fighting hunger. Second big technology area for us has been pollution. So we have world-leading technologies for the removal of sulfur, NOx, particulates, a lot of other nasty stuff from a variety of industries. It's our technology, with a few of our competitors, but we are still the largest, that have enabled us to forget about acid rain. And also we have been supplying the oil and gas sector for many years with the leading technologies and catalysts, enabling them to be as energy efficient and as resource efficient in their production as possible. These are all achievements that we are pretty proud of, but they are also all somehow or the other related to the fossil world, either as feedstock or as customer segment. So when my grandfather died 10 years ago, that was still the case. We spent a couple of years finding our feet. That's a long story in itself. The 14 of us in second and third generation on how to go about being a family that owns a business together and not messing it up. We were not prepared for it for many various reasons. That's not the story of today. The thing is, we did find our feet and came together as a family. We want to really do whatever we can do to be the best possible owners of this company. But we also realize that the company has to change. If we want to live up to that purpose, solving significant societal problems, we cannot continue in the fossil world. And actually, we realized we have technologies with the competences that we've developed over decades to actually solve climate issues. And okay, so let's try and do that. We agreed on, the 14 of us. And that's of course not an easy task, pivoting an 83-year-old company that's doing very well financially, for sure. And why would we take the risk of trying to transform the company with all that comes with that and pivoting it completely to the green economy? Well, it's back to the purpose, solving important societal problems. And I don't think the climate crisis, you can get any bigger in terms of what problems we are facing on the planet today. We also realized that we were not very well equipped for it. So the 14 of us, we're a diverse bunch, the former investment banker, there's a lawyer, the filmmaker, a nurse, an advertising guy, and so on, not your sort of usual combination of sort of the best owners to drive such a journey. So we realized we needed help. We brought along Temasek, the Singaporean sovereign wealth fund that now owns 30%. And together with them, we made a strategy where we realized we had to change a large part of the organization. We have had to make significant investments, far bigger than we've ever done, in areas that we have proven works in the lab, but are unproven industrially. So we are today building the largest electrolyzer facility in the world in Herning, here in Denmark, on a technology that is 30% more efficient than existing electrolyzer technologies. And for those of you who don't know, without electrolyzer capacity, you will not be able to make green hydrogen. Without green hydrogen, you will not have all the beautiful PTX products that are necessary if we want to decarbonize the 25-30% of the world's emissions that come from the hard-to-abate sectors.
PTX, I think, is world famous in Denmark. I'm not sure these guys get it, so...
We are not world famous. We have been pretty bad at communicating about ourselves. That is something we're trying to change.
What is it, Jakob? PTX?
Oh, sorry. Power to X. So you take green electrons being made by windmills, solar panels. You then use them as power in this electrolysis process that we are developing. And with that, you split water in its components, so hydrogen and oxygen. Then you get green hydrogen. With the green hydrogen, you can either use it directly as an energy source, or you can synthesize it further to green ammonia, green methanol, e-fuels that are essential for decarbonizing shipping, aviation, steel, cement production, etc., etc. So, but we, 5 years ago then, when we got Temasek in to get us some help on how to approach this, we sat down and said, okay, we need to change the organization, new management, we need to take on risk, and we came up with a vision that said we want to be recognized as a global leader in decarbonization technologies by 2024. 2024 is pretty soon if you check your calendar. And this is, we put this on paper 3.5 years ago. People thought we were crazy, and probably we were a little bit. But that is what, if you really work with purpose and you mean it, that was the only thing that we saw as the right thing to do. And the 14 of us, yes, we want to make money, of course, as well as owners. But what keeps us together as a family in this dedication to the company, what gets us excited is actually that we are doing something that we can be proud of, that our children can be proud of. And that is much more important than making the last buck. So it's still very much purpose before business, not purpose without business. You said it, Paolo. It doesn't make sense. We need to reinvest whatever we make. If you're not competitive, you're not going to make it. And I'm pretty proud to say, even though we don't have 2024, we are by far the one that wins the most contracts, technology-wise, in sustainable aviation fuel, renewable diesel, and a lot of these other decarbonization technologies that will save the planet eventually. So that is a very short story about how we've been working with purpose in Topsøe.
Well, that's great, and it's a tremendous story. Can you say a little bit about the Temasek investment, and what were you looking for from it? Was it predominantly a financial deal? Is it to get investment? Is it to get new knowledge?
Great question. So we realized when we got a whole governance structure together in the family after my grandfather died, that we needed help as owners. We had a sort of a soul-searching exercise. It was actually pretty painful. It took several years. How can we? How dare we continue being owners of such an important company with such important possibilities? I said, well, we need help. We are the ones we are. We are not perfect, and so we needed. Yes, we need finances, but you can get financial support, from everywhere pretty much. So that was not what was the big issue. It was to get someone that shares your values, shares your vision, long-term approach, and shares your dedication to sustainability, which Temasek really does, and have proven the 5 years that they've been together was that they really that we really do share that. So.
And they sit on the board?
Yes. So the board consists of 12 people. We have an objective chairman, Jeppe Christiansen, that some of you in the room know.
Independent.
Sorry, independent. Thank you, Steen. And then there are 2 family members, myself and a cousin. And we can appoint the chairman and 2 other independent board members. And then Temasek have 2 of their own people on the board, and they appoint a 3rd independent. And then we have the 4 employee representatives. That, by the way, are great. I think it's a great thing to have on the board. That's a different story.
And they're putting in the additional capital required to get you to the scale you want to be?
Yes, what happened in the transaction back in 19 was they bought 30%. We got a chunk of money sitting in our holding company, and that's being earmarked, almost all of it, to be reinvested together with Temasek when and if we have investments that needs to be done, and which we are now doing.
But Jakob, if you want to save the world, I mean, the world is a pretty big place with hydrogen, you can imagine. I mean, this is not small business anymore. We're going to have to replace gas, worldwide or something like that. How can you, what's the model here? You cannot just, I mean, you need to be diluted, don't you, or what?
I don't know if we need to be diluted. I don't want to be diluted.
I know.
We are dedicated to stay as majority owners in principle forever, and as usual say, forever is a pretty long time. But that's the thinking, and the main reason, of course, is there's just the sheer pride of being part of this. But it's also we want to ensure that the purpose lives forever.
Good. And once you ask you a little bit about the role, because my sense is that the purpose really was what got you to remain as an owner in some sense when you talk.
Absolutely. So in this excruciating exercise, realizing that we were not, at least not by ourselves alone, the perfect owner, we considered then, well, just lean back. The business is doing pretty good. Don't interfere. But that it would be contradictory to our values, which is also being as professional as we possibly can as owners, and solving big societal problems. Okay, so we couldn't lean back, and then we thought about, okay, why don't we just sell the whole bloody thing, get it, get that pain out of the door, and get all the nice money in the bank, and much to I think many of the family members' surprised, nobody wants to do that. And it would be a lot of money, but who cares? We want to make sure that this beautiful company with the beautiful aspirations that we've inherited from my grandfather, lives the right life.
Who wants to become a billionaire, right?
This is so much more fun.
What about a foundation?
So foundation. So why my grandfather decided to pass it on to the 14 what he used to call impossible family members, I don't know, but he made that decision. I know that he didn't want to create a foundation. First of all, at the time, it would practically be impossible due to the Danish tax regulation at the time. But also, he didn't like, at least not Topsøe in a foundation concept. He was afraid, and I think he was a visionary in that sense, that he was afraid that by having these very limiting statutes, that pivot that he has not been part of, but he saw that there will be big changes to the company. He just didn't know when and what. But if they were too limiting, then that pivot would not be possible.
Thank you.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you, Jakob.
Thank you.
So Hannah, you're next. And there is a slide set, I think, or maybe not. Yeah, rock and roll. Good.
Yeah, it feels good to be here. Take a look how this is working. Do I have just to press?
Nope, the green one.
Okay, perfect. So I'm Hannah. I'm from Stapelstein. I'm the steward owner, CEO, and co-founder of Stapelstein, and all in one wonder. And in our company, it's all about sparking imagination and activity at play with design to grow. And we're a German brand, as you maybe hear with our name Stapelstein. And we do design and manufacture all of our products in Germany. And why we are doing this is because we believe that play is the DNA of life. It's what children naturally do right from the beginning. They explore themselves and their world with the whole body through play. And life would not be possible without movement. Movement is the catalyst of development, and active play benefits their physical health, their cognitive development, and also their social skills. And we realized that there's a huge lag, especially in our digital age with a lot of screen time. According to the World Health Organization, 80% of the children do not have enough exercise. So with this simple but powerful awareness, we started our journey in 2016. Stefan, the designer, co-founder, and steward owner, so again a one-in-one hit, came up with the idea of Stapelstein during his studies as a product designer. And he was in exchange with education professionals, and again he noticed there's a huge lack of movement in children's daily life. There's no time for movement and open-ended active play. So he created a system, a modular system of products that empowers movement individually, even in limited spaces. And he presented his idea at the student exhibition at the end of the semester, and there were 2 investors who expressed interest in his concept, and they convinced him in only 2 weeks to found a company together with them. So the company was founded, the 3 of them, with equal shares, so each of them held 30%, and they all had the right to vote and make decisions. And in the beginning, that was all right. Stefan and I built up the company. The 2 investors stayed in the background, did basically nothing, but they provided the first initial fund for the first manufacturing tool. So it was good to have them until it came to decision making. And for me personally, it was at some point I felt like I'm stupid because I'm pouring my whole lifetime into this company without any salary and still feeling like a founder. But when it became to the real important topics or decision making, I had no power at all. And then in 2019, we came to a realization that how can we present free play if we're not free ourselves? Because we had our first larger revenue, and then it was pretty clear that there are different interests between the 2 investors and us. So we wanted to reinvest the money in Stapelstein for sure, and the 2 of them, they wanted the money on their private bank account. So that was the moment where the fight started. And it took us 3 years, a lot of energy and also a lot of financial resources. And I'm so grateful that there's the purpose economy in Germany who finally helped us to achieve our freedom last year. So now finally we are free ourselves, and I can call myself a steward owner. And I think what's special in our case is that we do have these products, and we use them every time, every day on our own. And for us, it's like the embodiment of our purpose. So they really guide us right from the beginning. It was a purpose-driven idea, and the only way was to found a company to bring this idea to the world. So the purpose was the reason why we are standing here. And the products are, how do you say, they bring the values and our purpose to life. So in every daily decision, we can ask ourselves, is it child-friendly? Not childish, is it child-friendly? Like, is it for the long term? Does it make fun? Is it playfully? Does it activate you? And is it safe enough to try? Or is it easy enough so everyone can understand it? So it really helps us on a daily basis. And what I already heard is like business and purpose has to go hand in hand. And in our case, I can say it works. Even for a startup, it can be successful. So maybe a few numbers of our business. We do have already over 2 million Stapelstein elements in the world, bringing movement and play into daily children's life. And we had a revenue last year of 12 million euros, and we are planning this year with over 15 million euros. We are 25 people all over Germany. We do remote 100%, and there are already some new products in the pipeline for next year. So it feels like the journey has just started, and I'm grateful to be here. Thank you so much.
Well, that's a very inspiring story, and I'm particularly interested in this steward ownership part of that story, which was obviously critical to you. And for those of you who are not familiar with it, in Germany they're introducing this notion of steward ownership, which is not dissimilar from a foundation in Denmark, but has some differences. What has been your experience as a startup company in terms of...
Maybe we should ask, what is steward ownership? Can you explain what it is?
Go ahead.
Big question. I can say what it is for me.
Yeah.
And the most painful moment as what I felt is that people are making decisions and they influence your daily operations and they have no idea. They just have the power because they had the money, but they have no idea about what you're really doing and how to achieve the purpose. So I think that's a big failure in our current legal system, and that's what steward ownership is solving for me.
So it gives you the control of the organization.
Yeah.
And you had to promise you'd never pay dividends, right?
Sorry again.
You will never pay dividends out of the company. The money will be reinvested in the purpose.
That was the moment in 2019 where they made a decision that we don't reinvest any money. And for us, it was like...
We don't pay it out. You reinvest everything.
Yeah. That's like the way you should do it, in our opinion.
And you're going to be happy with that going forward, are you? That you're not going to pay out any dividends?
And finally, it felt like we are driving with the handbrake on. Like now, finally, we have the access to the money and have the power to do something. So we invested in ourselves, in the purpose.
Are you going to raise additional finance, do you think, externally, or are you just going to use your retained?
We are so happy with ourselves right now. But there are ways to invest in us, but I don't know, I'm coming from the south of Germany and we often deal what we have. Like it's in our nature that we just spend the money we already have on our bank account.
That's wonderful.
Brilliant.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Hello, hi. Am I supposed to press a button?
Yeah.
Okay, well then let me use this time to introduce myself. My name is Jenica, hi. I've been on this conference for the past couple of days and I can just say thank you so much for inviting me. It was such a joy to listen to all those talks and have great insightful conversations during the dinners. So thank you so much. I'm going to talk about ECOSIA, and usually in Germany when I talk about ECOSIA I'm going to ask who knows it. I'm not going to do that here because I know in Denmark people don't, oh yeah, that was one hand. Right. And another one, but I noticed you're from Hamburg, so yeah, exactly. In Germany it's known, here not so much. Another hand, awesome. I'm going to talk about ECOSIA and and our purpose and practice. Well, this young man over here, this is Christian, and Christian a couple years back was traveling the world and he noticed, oh damn, the rainforests are being cut down, the ecosystems are getting destroyed. Deserts are just expanding, desertification everywhere. Someone needs to solve this. Someone needs to take care of this. At the same time, coming from a background of trading at the stock market and studying economics, he was like, ooh, search engines, huh? There's a lot of money. And also, they are really necessary. It's something we use on a daily basis, and we have big players out there that seem to have the purpose of being the best product, but maybe not in the best interest of the planet, necessarily. So today, he's not alone anymore. We are over 100 people located in Berlin, Germany. And our purpose is to power the regeneration of our planet, including the people that live on it. And we do this by creating very simple ways for people everywhere to participate in this purpose, in this mission, on an everyday basis, by planting trees that restore ecosystems and by also being climate active themselves. I hope this works, it's a video, but it doesn't, okay. Well, but everyone knows how a search engine is working, I assume. Yes. So if you were to visit us in Berlin, for instance, you might want to look for a hotel. And if you do so, there will be an advertisement from a hotel booking platform, right? That's how we make money. That's how Google makes money. Someone clicks on it, ka-ching. Of course, this is not the only thing that is happening on the search engine. Of course, there's also information being displayed and filtered. And some people would say, there's this one way to filter information, and we say, well, the information needs to be filtered in a way that makes sense for planet and climate. We want to raise awareness for climate activism. We want to raise awareness for behavioral changes that are necessary in order to have a positive impact on your own footprint. And then let's talk about the ka-ching part. So every month we publish our financial reports, and we talk about how much money we made and how we spend it. Because as mentioned initially, search engines are quite profitable. So we are relatively small in comparison to the big Google, surprise. But our annual revenue currently is at 25 million euros. And so every month we say, okay, this is what we made. So in February this year, it was 2.6 million euros. And then we talk about how we spend it. And then we talk about profits. And our profit margin is around about 50%. And we say planet before profit. So profits are not the ultimate goal. But however, we want to maximize our profits because all of our profits are used for the planet. How is that happening? Well, so we use all of our money that is left over, the whole margin, to this is the majority of what we do, to plant trees where they are needed most in a way that is really restoring ecosystems. And, well, oh yeah, okay, well, we do this in a very holistic way because some of you are familiar maybe with tree planting and the approach or the idea of greenwashing that comes with it. If we want to put a seed in the ground and say, yep, tree number 1, that would be an issue. But instead, we look at where were the trees cut down initially, for instance, in Indonesia, where the rainforest used to be. And why was it cut down? Well, because people need money. You know, the people who own the land need money to survive, so they rent it out to some big industrial firms that are producing palm oil for all of us. And the end result is dying ecosystems and orangutan that are also going extinct. So we want to answer this question and create a business case for the people that live there. And in Indonesia, for instance, we're working with a really great partner on the ground, and we're using agroforestry. So we are combining recreating a forest together with an economic approach of planting useful plants and trees in between, which have high yields and crops that they can then sell. So to this date, we have planted over 180 million trees all around the world, but the majority is in biodiversity hotspots. And this was only possible because 20 million people out there decided, okay, that sounds really cool. I want to be part of this journey. I want to be part of this purpose. We are not stopping there. As I mentioned, the majority of our money is going towards trees, but we are also expanding our knowledge we gain there to regenerative agriculture because it's a very big part in our footprint, and we need innovation in this field. And also when it comes to being a tech company, of course, there's a footprint because we use service. Well, we started out with saying, yes, let's make sure that this is 100% climate neutral. And then we said, wait a second, our purpose is to regenerate. How can we regenerate when we stop at 100%? This doesn't work out. So by now we produce 250% of what we use, but we're not going to end there because the world is quite a big place. So myself, I am an employee. I'm not C-level, I'm not the owner, but I'm standing here and I'm telling you the purpose of this company is really, really great. I would not have done that 5 years ago for a different company I was working for, which was a startup. And initially, it was really great working there. I had lots of fun. It was a great culture. We had a purpose. And then investors came around and everything changed. There was a whole shift in what the purpose was. All of a sudden it was a shareholder value. We were just talking about profits and money, and I was out. So I joined ECGI, and I was like, whoa, this is really cool. This resonates with me. But I was wondering, who makes sure that this will be the case in 5 years' time? Like, who is giving me this promise? And this is where steward ownership comes in, because Christian, the guy I introduced initially, he asked himself the same question. He said, who's going to protect the purpose of ECGI from my own greed at some point, or of someone else's greed once I'm gone? And so he was looking for an answer, and he found this answer in steward ownership, which is, again, very similar to the Enterprise Foundation here in Denmark. And we used the foundational law. So there is the Purpose Foundation that is serving as a helper, as an enabler to do this steward ownership model. And they hold some voting shares of ours, some golden shares so-called, with a veto right that they have to use whenever someone's trying to sell ECGI or trying to use the profits for anything else than reinvestment or the purpose. And this can't be changed. Behind this thing is a big, big movement. So Hannah and I are just two representatives of this movement, but there's so many companies in Germany that are very interested in this model. The issue is you always have to use a foundation, but it would be so much better if you could like tick a box and it would be a legal form. And this is what we're currently lobbying for, and quite successfully. So the government has agreed that we need this legal form, and it's just a question of time when it comes. I think that's it. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Brilliant. Okay, so clearly a very inspiring model, but shouldn't you be? You're putting 100% of your profits into the planet. Shouldn't you be putting them into trying to grow, compete with Google, really innovate, so that you become a much larger company, rather than putting it out in that form?
Yeah, it's a challenge. It's a very big question we are asking ourselves every day, because of course it's quite a competitive market, even more so now with AI coming around the corner and being like, oh, search engines, huh? We might not need them tomorrow. So yeah, we are questioning ourselves, how much money do we have to invest into the product in order to still pursue our purpose? But it always comes at this question like, what can we do right now, restoring the ecosystems, and what do we believe our investment can make tomorrow in the next 10 years or so? So every day, this is a question and a challenge that we are facing.
Right. And do you feel the pressure of having to compete in terms of the technology, the quality of the search engine relative to competitors?
Yes and no. So of course, we want to serve people with a really good experience. But let's be honest, ECGI will never be as good as Google when it comes to search results. It's just a different purpose. They want to be the best, and they will be the best. Our purpose is a different one, and that's why people decide to use us. But again, it shouldn't come at the cost of being a bad product.
Okay, thank you. Is it possible? I mean, I guess there must be different search ethics, and so on, different ways of organizing, writing the algorithms, and so on. Are you into that? Yeah.
Yeah, also a very interesting question. Indeed, I think it comes with responsibility to be a search engine, to ask yourself, how do you use this data? How do you use the algorithm? And we're on it. So it's just a very easy feature. But for instance, if you're looking for a flight connection, ECGI says, hey, that's cool, here's a flight connection, but did you know that with a train connection, you could save this amount of CO2? Or if you want to learn more about a country, usually on a search engine, you would have this little feature that is like a summary on Wikipedia. Or you have that as well on ECGI, but down below it says the current climate politics in this country is leading to this climate scenario. So it's really about distributing information in a different way. And also what we're working on right now is 20 million people is a lot. And it's not just about the ecological footprint of an individual, it's also about the handprint. So how can we try to mobilize them in order to work consistently and together as a movement on system change?
Yeah. So everybody can try this. Pick up your phone, go to the App Store, search ECGI, download the app, and you got it, right?
Thank you. Thanks so much.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've heard from 5 extremely interesting, very diverse companies, very different presentations, and as you can see, all of them are incredibly inspiring businesses. So this is a real opportunity for you to get to grips with what it means to be a purposeful business, be it a foundation, be it a listed company or whatever, and understand the pros and cons of it. So let's throw it open to you at this stage to start interrogating some of the ideas and thoughts that you've just heard. Who wants to go first?
I guess that's me. Hello again.
One question.
Pardon?
One question.
One question. Oh, you already know me. So Sylvie Rohr, I'm a PhD candidate from the University of Hamburg. So just one question. I wonder, how does the purpose influence the way and how you interact with your employees in terms of rights, compensation, participation, and also expectations?
Good. Who wants to go on this? You want to go?
Sure. Is this one on? Yes, it is. Great. So I am an employee myself, right? So I can answer this question just from this perspective. I would say the self-understanding of ECOSIA is the one of a social business, and social business means inside and out. So we don't want to be the ones that extract everything that we do and who we are in order to pursue this purpose on an outside perspective or dimension, but rather also inside. We want to be a company where people want to work, where people can be humans, where people want to make a career and grow. And I think this reflects very much in our culture, I would say. We are not perfect, that's for sure. It's a long way. We have still a very white male C-level, and this is about to change, but you know, we're getting there. It's a process.
So it's Paolo first and then Lene. Then I'll close this one and we go on to the next question.
Okay, thank you. I think it was actually a really, really good and very provoking question. And I can't say that, you know, we use it in terms of remuneration and so on, as you said. But what we do is that we use it very much also when we employ new people and the people that are there, that it's really important that they can see themselves in that purpose. And I think the effect that it's having is that it actually is part of being able to delegate in a safe way, so to speak, in a confident way, because I know the employees will actually think about what they do in taking that in context of the purpose, and they do it very directly. I do get investment proposals where part of it is how does it, fit into our purpose, and basically describing it. So it is very important that it's not just something you have hanging on the wall.
Paolo.
So creating meaningful connections is a 360-degree purpose. It's not just for consumers, for customers, for regulators, for shareholders. It starts with ourselves. I parked the problem of not having a purpose twice because I didn't have the time or the inclination, frankly. I had more interesting and busy things to do. It was only when it became evident that the business needed, the 11,000 people that work in the business needed to engage with a greater why, more than just making money. We do pay dividends. We're listed on the Nikkei Stock Exchange. We have an expectations. There is an expectation that we produce profit. But engaging our employees at all levels has been one of the one of the drivers of making this thing come to life. And we have changed senior executive remuneration. 30% of my long-term incentive is now linked to, well, I'm happy to share how we calculate it with anybody that's interested, what we call sustainable EBITDA. We don't report it, we don't talk about it outside because it's not perfect. And for reporting purposes, everything needs to be perfect, obviously. But 200 people, me included, have that in our long-term incentives. But more than that, where I've really seen the power come to life is in day-to-day problem solving and day-to-day decision making. War in Ukraine kicks off. We have a stated objective of moving towards renewable energy for electricity in our breweries. I talked about it earlier on. The breweries need to run though. So what do you do if you can't get fuel? Breweries shut down. No beer is brewed, no beer is brewed, no revenues generated, no profits made, brewery shuts. It's as simple as that. So we took a decision to put capex back into some of our breweries to be able to run on traditional carbon fuels. There was no choice. Rather than shy away from the problem and keep it hidden in the boardroom and not talk to anybody, the first thing we did was I did a vlog and went out to 11,000 people saying, just so you're not confused, our journey towards net zero has not changed. Our journey towards renewables has not changed. But in order to safeguard our business, your jobs, our customers' livelihoods, we have to make this small U-turn. Our commitment is that we will never use that kit that we've put into the breweries unless we absolutely have to. And some would see that as a wasted investment. We spent hundreds of thousands of euros putting that kit in. Never used it because we never had to. But the breweries need to run for us to generate money.
Great. Another question. Yeah, Tom.
Tom?
Hi, thanks very much for sharing all those compelling stories. I've got a question about kind of the balance between growth and maintaining the purpose, which I think picks up a little bit on the question Colin asked. And you know, I mean, companies like Amazon and Google have sort of completely changed the way the world works, partly through becoming, you know, completely kind of dominant globally in their fields. And I wonder how you think about balancing that increased impact that comes from growth versus the tension of retaining control, because that might need external financing, and whether that actually also potentially conflicts with the purpose. And, you know, is it better to be, you know, small and beautifully purposeful, or extend your impact, but does that bring compromises with it? And I wonder how you think about that.
Maybe we'd say that was the question for Jakob actually before, whether he would accept it being diluted and potentially losing the purpose, right?
But I can expand on that. First of all, I'm not a believer that we should abandon growth as a concept. I think that's a very wrong solution. Without growth, we are not developing technologies. If you take the technology that we're developing, I hope they grow like crazy, because that means we're going to save the planet. So it's not. I don't think that needs balancing. It's how you direct policies towards growth. What we heard from Professor Babchuk about how you deal with politicians or how they deal with you. I'm very much pro global CO2 tax. I'm very much pro incentives that gives subsidies to green products. But in terms of you know, balancing growth, I think we need growth. Otherwise, we're just going to do the same old thing that we've done for the last few decades, and we're going to burn off the planet.
And Hannah, yeah, you've been there, right? Never again, right?
No. In our case, I would say we need to grow, we want to grow, and we need investors. We need money from the outside. But we already know that there are people who are believing in us, us as people who will make the right decisions. And I think there are a lot of possibilities to have investors, but not in a way that they turn the business around and destroy the company. So I think in our case, we definitely need to grow because we want to empower a revolution in the toy industry, and if we want to do that, we need to be like Lego or something in this area of company.
And of course, you have to work maybe with alternative ways of financing, maybe having joint ventures or loan capital and all that, And here's where the big old foundations come in, because they can lend a generous hand, can't they?
Maybe. No, I think just another viewpoint, because I think we are, at least when we're a foundation as we are, where we have both a philanthropic goal and a purpose. For us, it's really important that we don't mix it together, because what we haven't talked about a lot today is that our philanthropic goal is actually to, put money into public research so that we can become better at diagnosing, treating, and potentially preventing brain diseases. That in itself could be a purpose. But that's where our statutes come in, because there are two goals that we were born with, that we have to be long-term owners and have a philanthropic purpose. And that philanthropic purpose is there in its own right. But it is not enough for us, for that purpose to capture all of the commercial activities that we have. So our purpose, we have tried to put that sort of on top so that it covers both the commercial part and the philanthropic part. So it guides us to what kind of projects are we going to support in terms of public research, where you'll find part of our purpose saying that it has to be sort of, yes, at the frontier of its fields and very important, create ripple effects, things that we then take into consideration when we work with our philanthropic purpose. And when it comes to the commercial part, we also use it to guide and to grow, getting back to the growth question, because it then again talks about it having to be forefront of its fields, being innovation. So no, we cannot grow by buying a company that's not innovative. We cannot grow by buying a company and engaging ourselves in that is not somehow at the forefront of what they do in international. So it guides both the commercial and the philanthropic part. But I just felt that it was important to mention that we also have that philanthropic part that really is where we sit and say, well, again, then comes the business part. The more we grow, the more money we make, the greater chance there is that we might just find a cure for brain disease. That in itself is worth getting up to in the morning.
And recently you made a very unpopular decision, which has, to do with this, right? Maybe you can talk a little bit about it.
Yes, if you really want me.
Yes!
I think what you are alluding to is the fact that we made a decision to change the share structure of Lundbeck. And it had only one class of shares, and we decided to change it so that we had two classes of shares, A and B shares, with A shares having more votes. And now we heard earlier on from Peter Wallenberg when he was questioned about the different share classes that, yeah, why not? Because that's traditional how we do it in the Nordic. That's not something new. That's what you should expect, so why change it? What had actually happened was that when the foundation IPO'd Lundbeck back in 1999, that was, I think, at the height of where the two share classes were really unpopular. So it was IPO with only one share class. And when we then had the discussion at board level, obviously, that for Lundbeck to become successful, they have to grow. They have to continue to grow not just organically, potentially also inorganically. And they have to become, of course, more valuable because they're also within brain diseases. And we needed to take that very long-term view that if we were to ensure that we could always be a long-term owner, and that we would never end up having to be a stumbling block and prevent the right development for the company, then we wanted to be in the same position as basically all other enterprise foundations in Denmark, that we wanted to have the higher voting shares. We knew it was going to be unpopular. We talked about when is the right timing, came to the conclusion there is never a right timing for this. If it is the right long-term thing to do, and we are absolutely certain that it is, because it gives flexibility both to the foundation to ensure our own longevity and to ensure the longevity and growth of the company, then we simply have to do it. Communicate as best possible as we can. We try to do that. I think there was a lot of understanding. There was also a lot of people opposing it. And yesterday we went out there. I knew at 5 o'clock in the morning that it was not going to be a great day in the office, because we were not going to be popular. But you don't win popularity tests always. And I think it was one of those instances where short-term and long-term interest clashed. And we had to make a choice. So we made the choice for the long term. I hope that covers it.
Tremendous. Thank you very much. Another question? Yes.
Terry.
University of Liverpool. Inspiring stories, all of them. But I've got a question for Paolo, if I may, which is, I'm really reflecting on the comment getting people to drink better, and the whole story about that Colin's question took you to purpose. And, you know, does that stretch to dealing with the problems, the social problems associated with alcohol, in the sense where you know, education programs of how to educate people to drink better, dealing with, you know, rehabilitation? It's not meant to be a cynical question. It's a skeptical question. And the rider to that, is there anything to do with your listed form of ownership, etc., which makes it difficult to move your purpose into those areas if you don't do those things?
So I think skepticism is a good thing, and it keeps everybody honest. For many years, I think the alcohol industry has not been as direct as it needs to be, or in the space of education. In the recent 10, 15, 20 years, that changed radically. I think you've seen, I hope you've seen, you should have seen significant activity in both education, but also assistance with the effects that ultimately are the personal choices that people make around the use of the product. The fundamental thing that has changed, though, in the last 5 years across the industry, certainly the beer industry, but also spirits to some extent, has been the development and the need that's arisen from consumers of a meaningful proposition in the non-alcoholic space. For many years, people drank non-alcoholic beer because they had to drive. They drank non-alcoholic beer because they had to forgo the real experience. When we talk about creating meaningful connections, we talk about creating meaningful human connections. It doesn't need the alcohol. But if I can produce a product that tastes like your favorite beer, whether it's called Peroni Nastrazurro or whether it's called Asahi Super Dry, it doesn't matter, but it's your favorite beer, that gives you the experience of that taste, but without the alcohol, at scale, not at 0.2% of portfolio, but at 10, 12, 15, 20% of portfolio, that's the code cracked. In Asahi, we've started talking about zebra drinking. One alcoholic, one non-alcoholic, one alcoholic, one non-alcoholic. The occasion stays the same. So, yes, do we educate? We do. Could we do more? I'm sure we could. Do we deal with the effects of abuse of alcohol? Yes, we do. Could we do more? Yes, we can. But the fundamental shift that we've made has been we've changed our portfolio. Now, is creating meaningful connections as relevant if we are the Pepsi franchise in Malaysia, we are the Pepsi franchise in Australia, we are Schweppes in Australia. Yes, it is. At the end of the day, those occasions are, if I'm out with my wife or my daughters, we may choose to drink different beverages in occasion. So we can still create meaningful connections outside of beer in and of itself.
Questions? Yep.
It's not a true question.
Put mic. I don't think I need the mic. Oh, yes, you do.
It's like a demonstration of the objects. So is this to play? Is this to build? Can you show it?
Yeah.
Okay, I think this is a great way to end the session. Let's have a demonstration.
It's always hard work to start because that's a bit difficult now. But yeah, it's actually even for before the birth, you can practice your body to giving birth. So you can sit on it, make some exercise, and then it's to make like a balance parkour. But the tiny children are stack it around, flip it, do it again, and it's for indoor and outdoor. So it swims in water. You can take it easily in water, and it swims. It holds you even up, and can men use it as well? Sure, it's 180 kilograms, so and you can use the balance board on its own, and then you can just do whatever you want. It's for open-ended active play, so there's no right and wrong, and that's the beautiful thing about it, because often the adults say something, this is right and this is wrong to the children, but here they don't know what to do.
Brilliant. Thank you very much indeed. And I think with that, we will draw this to a close. I'd like to just thank the panel very much indeed for an absolutely stimulating and tremendous conclusion to a 3-day event. And you want to say something?
Who's right, Lucian Bebchuk or the panel here?
Well, we'll leave it up to the audience to answer that question. But so before handing over to Marco for the final closing remarks, I'd just like to thank the various people involved in this tremendous set of 3 days. The people in ECGI, Noreen, Suzanne, Katerina, Carla, and of course, Elaine, and all the CBS team, Trina, Lisa, and all the various other people I failed to mention. And I'd particularly like to thank Steen for having organized this event, sponsored it, and without whose we would really not have been able to have held this event at all. So thank you very much indeed to all of you. Now over to Mark.
Does this work? Yeah. So I have the task of wrapping this up in possibly 5 minutes. So the first conclusion, I think, from the conference, especially from the last panel, is that we talked about purpose, but in the end, control matters. Okay, so that was my first conclusion. And I thought we actually heard some testimony of this, why corporate control is so important and how corporations are controlled. And I thought Stapelstein was a particularly vivid example of that lesson, which is why we got into corporate governance, many of us in the first place. Now, I then couldn't resist thinking how we could close, if you could show the slide, to come back to beer. Well, first of all, because I'm German and I live in Belgium, and the two nations could never agree on the definition of what beer is. Yeah, okay. Well, they ferment cherries and make them into beer in Belgium. I mean, it's something, yeah. But now, what problem, asking Colin's question, what problem was beer actually trying to solve? It was actually originally meant to be a nutritional supplement, okay, which made sense at the time. So that's my first point. Things evolve in time. Now, I don't want to knock Stapelstein, but who knows what? I mean, Stapelstein, obviously, it's hard to think what could be bad about it. But, maybe in 100 years, it couldn't be what it is today. Okay, so we obviously heard about alcohol, and if you go back to actually 1882, the thing in green in the purpose statement, that was really very worthy. Okay, don't be short-term, regardless of immediate claim. Develop the best beer. Remember, the nutritional supplement. So the problem really comes in once, and that was true for fossil fuels as well until recently. So the real problem comes in when you realize that this profit-making thing, of which when you make more of it, when we heard, and sell more of it, that's really profitable, when that actually becomes something that might not be so good. And then the real question comes. And then in this purpose statement, the thing, of course, that comes is the part that was not highlighted, but that was talked about, which is assist in keeping beer brewing in this country at the high and honorable level. Now, I'm not a lawyer, but clearly the crucial wording here is, what does honorable level in Denmark mean? Okay, and we heard, and who interprets that? Now, we heard from the chair of the foundation that the way the foundation has interpreted this as meaning today, developing the best non-alcoholic beer. This is what they thought this interpretation was. Now, this is a foundation. We also heard about foundations versus widely held companies. The foundation might not be there forever. It could go bankrupt. The shareholders get wiped out. If it's not said, they could sell, like the Wellcome Trust, and it could become a widely held company. And then it was mentioned, and I think Herman said it, then the board needs to decide whether it wants to keep the second part or whether it just wants to focus on the green part. And I think we all heard Lucian Bebchuk say that he doesn't believe, if a board is in charge, that they will manage to stick to the second part. They might, put out a statement saying they want to do the second part, but they will do the profit maximizing thing, which is the best beer in the world, sell as much of it as possible. And I'm not going to mention any search company other than Ecosia, where, which you might think of. Now, then the question comes, what else? And I was quite surprised to hear from Lucian that he wants more regulation. This is really what he was saying. I mean, he put his belief in in government, and he wants shareholders to lobby for more regulation. I mean, I was quite surprised by this. It's logical, but is that really what we need in order to make that second part stick? And for me, what Herman said rang true with me. It's not one or the other. These things might actually be complementary. And why not have companies put out net zero commitments with a science-based targets? Shareholders can hold them accountable and so forth. And maybe then they can also be scrutinized by regulators. But to me, the conclusion, Colin, is that, and Steen and everybody else who was involved in putting the conference together, purpose is important. I think we had several examples today, including Carlsberg, why this is really very fundamental. The green thing is, ask yourself, why are you actually there, what you're doing? But if you define that that's not enough, you might still be doing harm and have an incentive to do that. So we'll have to keep thinking about, about what is honorable, and when people don't know what is honorable, how to remind them what that is. And I'm also thinking about the next US presidential election. Okay, now with that, let me thank people. Colin already started. So first of all, let me thank him and the program committee, Steen, George, Jennifer, and Jordi. They put in an amazing amount of effort to put this together. The speakers, of course, the young scholars on Wednesday who kicked off the conference, the chair of the research committee, Jennifer Hill, the editors, Amir Licht and Mike Burkhardt, Dan Buchniak, who not only won the prize today, but he is actually also editing the ECGI blog, and Tom Gosling, who is here now because he's not interviewing anybody at the moment. So Tom, we mentioned your conversation series many times. I think everybody really appreciates this. and we thank you this morning, but let me thank you again, especially again now, because this is really a crucial thing now that we do. And then, of course, Marlene Och, who sits there, who writes the newsletter. And then our sponsors and patrons. So Intesa San Paolo and Cleary Gottlieb for the working prizes, CBS, and our institutional members, Euroclear, SECA, IPCG, Intesa San Paolo again, okay, Oxford, Harvard, IESE, and BNP. And then, of course, our patrons, so the Wallenberg Group, AstraZeneca, and BlackRock. And then CBS. So let me thank you again, Steen, and Elise, and Trine, and Kaya. And then the audio desk. So Morten and Rene, who've been here all this time. And then, of course, the ECGI team, Carla, Suzanne, Noreen, Katerina, and Elaine. And then, last but, and of course, Kevin. That's the person who's taken all your photographs. He's there. Okay, he's there, taking more photographs. And then, of course, where's he? George Dallas. Now, George has the special task of trying to write this all up. And we're looking forward to that. But now, let's all go and have a drink. And don't forget to drink purposefully. Thank you very much.
Thank one group of people who Marco forgot to thank, and that is all of you who were not mentioned in that long list of thanks. Thank you very much.